In the year of famine, I became the only valuable thing in the family. To pay for my mother-in-law's medicine, I was pawned by my husband to a wealthy lord to bear him a son. I naively believed that as long as I gave birth to a son, I could reunite with my husband and return to the way things were. But my daughter was strangled, my son was taken away, and my beauty was utterly destroyed. I dragged my broken body back home, only to see my husband embracing his new bride. "You will be the first wife. And she will be the second," my mother-in-law said. "You gave birth to a son for another man outside, but our Lee family cannot be left without an heir." At that moment, my daughter's bruised little body and my son's heart-wrenching cries tore my heart to pieces. I crashed headfirst into the Lee family courtyard wall and died. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the night before being pawned as a wife. Under the candlelight, my husband held my hand tightly, his words sincere and heartfelt. "Mother's life is in your hands. As long as you give birth to a son, I'll bring you home immediately. I, Li Wenhan, will never let you down." I just smiled faintly. Okay. The last memory of my past life was the heart-wrenching pain as my head crashed against the courtyard wall, my vision blurred, and in the dim candlelight, Li Wenhan's kneeling figure twisted and wavered, "Ying, only you can save Mother. Without the medicine, Mother will die of illness." These piercing words jolted me awake. I have returned, back to the night before my wife was pawned. On the bed, my mother-in-law coughed with heart-wrenching agony, her clothes stained with still damp blood. 2 years ago, on a heavy snow day, she picked me up from the brink of freezing to death and brought me home. Out of gratitude for this kindness, I toiled like an ox, serving her and her son, washing, mending, and supporting Li Wenhan's studies. Yet he was like mud that couldn't be molded into a wall. He gambled away the family's entire savings, and creditors came knocking day and night. My gaze swept over the still-fresh double happiness character on the headboard, feeling nothing but irony. 3 months ago, having just turned 17, I naturally married into the Li family. Back then, he held my hands and said, "Once we're married, I will definitely change." But in the afternoon, Granny Chen from the neighboring village came to the house, saying that outside the mountains, there was a wealthy master over 30 years old who, because he had no children, was the subject of gossip. The elders in his clan urged him to take a concubine, but his wife at home disagreed, only allowing him to bring one in from outside through a temporary arrangement. If he was willing, he would offer 50 taels of silver, 50 taels of silver. Enough for Li Wenhan to pay off his gambling debts and buy medicine, and enough for him to pawn his wife like livestock to be mistreated by others. Seeing me remain silent for a long time, Li Wenhan pushed me to the ground. "Do you think I'm willing to pawn my wife to others? But what else can I do? If this continues, we'll all die." The image from my past life, with my hands covered in blood, flashed before my eyes, after narrowly surviving childbirth twice. The money I earned with my life saved both mother and child, but when I endured endless torment and sent a blood-stained letter for help, who was there to save me? The mother and son made excuses and cried poor, then immediately turned around to arrange for a new bride to enter the house. I looked up, staring at him intently. "Are you really going to pawn me off?" Li Wenhan thought I had changed my mind and immediately raised 3 fingers to swear to the heavens. "As long as you give that master a son, I will bring you home immediately. If I, Li Wenhan, ever betray you, may my family be destroyed and I die a miserable death." As he spoke, he even managed to squeeze out 2 tears. "Just agree to this one request for me, alright?" "Family destroyed and a miserable death," I repeated expressionlessly, catching a glimpse of the box under the bed. He had already taken the silver. When did I ever have a choice? I forced the tears back in my eyes and raised a faint smile. Alright. A few days later, in the presence of both families, Li Wenhan signed the contract with the Zhao family. The sound coming from the ancestral hall was still piercing. Li Wenhan, the undersigned, due to his mother's illness and family poverty, voluntarily pledges his wife, Mrs. Lin, to the Zhao family for 3 years. Any children born during this period shall be considered descendants of the Zhao family. If no child is born within 3 years, the term may be extended by 2 years, after which redemption is no longer permitted. Before parting, Li Wenhan was feigning a heartbroken cry. The Zhao family's home is far away. You, take care, I sneered inwardly, thinking, even now, you're still pretending. Suddenly, I burst into loud sobs, turning back with every step I took. Husband, you must strive to do better. If you can pawn me off today, will you pawn off our mother tomorrow? Husband, stop gambling, find a job, mother's life depends on you. The money from pawning me can only last for a while, not a lifetime. The discussions of the onlookers continued. Li Wenhan's face turned ashen, and he stumbled through the door in embarrassment, retreating into the house. I was pushed into the sedan chair by Granny Qian, and after a bumpy journey, we finally arrived at the Zhao family's home before evening. Due to my lowly status, I could only enter through the side door. Inside the door, the mistress had been waiting, with 2 maids and an elderly woman standing behind her. At the sight of this face, I couldn't stop trembling all over, with hatred surging within me. Only I know that beneath this benevolent facade, what a venomous heart lies within. She scrutinized me from head to toe, her brow furrowed tightly. From the very moment I stepped into this courtyard, she must have hated me. Right afterward, the mistress had me bathe in the side room. She sat to the side, watching me undress, while explaining the household rules. Your purpose is to bear sons for the Zhao family. Put away those improper thoughts. If you behave yourself, perhaps in the future, you could be elevated to a concubine. But if you don't behave, watch your skin. I have heard these words hundreds of times. Even if I am cautious and careful, have I ever escaped her torment? I deeply bowed my head, my shoulders trembling slightly. Yes, madam, I understand. Only when she saw me acting so submissive did she leave satisfied. That night, the master pushed the door open and entered. What are you standing there for? Take it off. In my past life, the master was not exactly a kind-hearted man, but he had never laid a hand on me. I remember the day I gave birth. His voice came from outside the courtyard. From now on, treat her according to the concubine's standard. But in the end, it is the mistress who has the final say in this household. He could give me the shadow of a title, but he couldn't shield me from those underhanded schemes. When the mistress used a silver hairpin to slash my face, he may have known, or perhaps he did not, but in the end, he remained silent. It's all my fault for being too foolish, holding on to Li Wenhan's promises and fearing the mistress's methods, never once revealing my true self to him. Only now do I realize that what could save me was always just a word from him. I stood with my head bowed by the bedside, my voice tinged with timidity. Master, master, since you are a pawned wife, you must have served others before. Where does this delicate pretense come from? His voice was icy cold. She must have spewed quite a bit of sour words. My hands trembling, I clumsily tried to undo the buttons. He lost his patience, suddenly blew out the candle, and roughly pressed down on me. His hands roamed wildly over my body, each touch carrying a sense of plunder, with no trace of tenderness, no hint of preparation. A tearing pain instantly surged, cold sweat trickled down my temples, and my body tensed up tightly. He suddenly froze in his movements. By the moonlight seeping in through the window, he could clearly see the marks on the bedsheet, and his breathing abruptly grew heavier. I, however, took the chance to snuggle deeper into his embrace, tears falling one by one onto the back of his hand, as I whimpered softly, "My husband, he has a physical ailment." Sure enough, the hand resting on my waist noticeably softened a little. With a hint of hesitation, he brushed away the hair stuck to my temple. After a moment, he then called a maid in to help with washing and dressing before leaving. I knew he was going back to his wife's room. They were childhood sweethearts, betrothed from a young age. If the mistress hadn't been frail and unable to conceive again after losing her only child, I'm afraid there would have been no place for me in this household. "Miss, let me help you wash up," a familiar voice timidly spoke up, carrying in hot water. Seeing me staring blankly at the door, she softly comforted, "Don't be sad, miss. On the first night, the master must consider the mistress's dignity." Xiao Kui, I grabbed her wrist tightly. In my past life, she was the only one willing to help me. Just for delivering a letter for me, she was beaten to death by the mistress. Clang! The water bucket was startled and overturned on the ground. I cupped her face in my hands and spoke word by word, "In this lifetime, we will both be just fine." The next day, as dawn broke, I was styling my hair before the bronze mirror when the mistress barged in with her maidservant. Glancing at the fading red marks on my neck, her knuckles turned white with tension, and she smiled with a hint of ferocity. "You must drink the fertility medicine on time, so you can give the master a son as soon as possible. Someone, come here." Before the words had even finished, the maid beside her was already waiting with a black ceramic bowl in hand, prying open my teeth, pouring the scalding medicinal broth down my throat. Only after the mistress had left, satisfied, did Xiaotsue dare to rush over, using a damp cloth to help soothe my face. "Miss, are you all right?" I struggled to stand up. Leaning on the edge of the bed, wiping the salty, metallic taste from the corner of my mouth, "It's only just begun." As night fell, the rain pattered softly. The master came again today, not as impatient as yesterday. He sat in the pearwood chair by the window, took a sip of tea, and looked at me with a scrutinizing gaze. "How old are you?" I suppressed the timidity from yesterday and answered crisply, reporting to the master, "I have just turned 17, where is your hometown?" I raised my face, a smile at the corner of my mouth, my eyes filled with longing. To compare Westlake to the beauty shisha, whether lightly adorned or richly made up, she is always lovely. My hometown is exactly the place described in the poem. "You've read books." A flicker of surprise passed through his eyes. I shook my head. "My father taught me a few characters before he passed away." This line of poetry was one he often recited, and hearing it so many times, I memorized it. Jiangnan. 1,000 miles away, he seemed lost in thought. My eyes instantly reddened, my throat choked with emotion. 2 years ago, my whole family fled the famine. My parents, both passed away. I was the only one left, collapsed in the snow. It was Granny Lee, who picked me up. I don't know if she's doing better now. The master fell silent for a moment, his eyes filled with a complex, hard-to-read expression. "They pawned you, and you still..." He didn't finish his sentence in the end. Only sighed and got up to leave. The moment the door closed, the pitiful expression on my face faded completely. As I gazed indifferently out the window, I was originally a noblewoman exiled for a crime. I have been trained in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting since childhood. How could I be illiterate? On the 3,000-mile journey of hard labor, my parents gave their lives to shield me from the bandits' blades, sparing my own broken life. I have not told anyone about these things. Not even Li Wenhan. For several days in a row, the master has been visiting my courtyard. I know he is here for the sake of an heir, but I go along with it. At times, I hold a primer, frowning at the character, life, circled in red ink. At times, he would look bewildered at the verses. After receiving an explanation, he would appear as if a light had suddenly dawned on him. So that's how it is. Master truly knows everything. He would occasionally talk about his travels in his youth. They say the gems of foreign lands sparkle like stars, and the winds of the northern frontier can split stones. I would rest my chin in my hands and listen quietly, and when I got carried away, I couldn't help but exclaim, "Wouldn't that blow people away? The winds of Jiangnan only make one's skin tingle." He would always be amused by this, his gaze sweeping over my eyes and brows, unconsciously softening with tenderness. Still, he never stayed overnight, and before leaving each time, he would always remind, "If there's anything you don't understand, write it down and ask me tomorrow." Bang! The door was pushed open, and the lady was still in this posture, Nanny Huang. She sat down directly, took the tea offered by the maid, and without even lifting her eyelids, "Last night in the west courtyard. How many times was water called for?" Replying to the mistress, 3 times, Aunt Huang stammered. Clang! The scalding teacup struck my shoulder hard. The intense pain making me gasp sharply, Madam suddenly stood up and shouted sternly, "Hold her down." 2 maids pinned me to the ground. Huang Ma pulled out 3 silver needles, aimed them at my fingertips, and thrust them fiercely into the nail beds. A piercing pain exploded. The maid beside me took out a piece of coarse cloth prepared in advance and stuffed it into my mouth. Cold sweat soaked through the inner garment, and darkness clouded the vision in waves. She was most skilled in this art, never leaving visible wounds, yet making life a living hell. As she was leaving, she leaned down and said coldly, "If the master learns even a hint of this, I will make you suffer 1,000 times over." I curled up on the ground, hoarsely calling out to Xiao Kui, who was rummaging for ointment, "What is the date today?" She turned around in a panic, her voice trembling with tears. "Miss, it's the 14th of September. Tomorrow will be the Mid-Autumn Festival, as expected. The master will receive an urgent order tonight and will have to leave early tomorrow morning to escort the goods. This trip will last 7 days. I gritted my teeth and struggled to sit up. Then pulled out a finished embroidered pouch from the bottom of the chest. "Is everything ready?" Xiaotsue took out the oil paper package from her sleeve, her fingertips trembling violently. It's all here." As expected, after nightfall, there was a constant coming and going in the outer courtyard. The servants were busy packing, and the lights remained lit until the late hours of the night. At the break of dawn, I stood before the bronze mirror and tied my hair into a simple, neat bun. After changing my clothes, I stood up and headed out, saying, "Let's go, we'll deliver the pouch." Xiaotsue's eyes were filled with fear, and she instinctively reached out to grab me. "Perhaps it would be better if I went to deliver it. If Madam finds out, I'm afraid." I gently patted the back of her hand, my steps not faltering in the slightest. This was the first time I had stepped out of this courtyard. The servants along the way hurriedly lowered their heads, stealing glances at me from the corners of their eyes. "Master, Miss Lin is here." The servant at the door rubbed his hands, unsure how to address him. A moment of silence passed inside the room before a low voice finally came through. "Come in." I pushed the door open and walked straight to the desk, gently placing the pouch on it. Thud, he knelt on the ground, his forehead pressed against the floor tiles. "Please, master, you must take this pouch with you." He was somewhat displeased. "What is the meaning of this?" When I looked up again, my tears were rolling down my cheeks. Yesterday in a nightmare, I dreamed the master was entangled by a venomous snake, and it seemed he was about to. At this point, she choked up and could not continue. He suddenly let out a low chuckle, then set down his brush and stood up, reaching out to help me rise. It was just a dream. How could it be taken seriously? I shook my head desperately, holding back my tears. "But I'm afraid." "Please, master, you must take it. It contains herbs to ward off evil spirits and snakes, and it will surely protect you." He sighed helplessly. "I'll take it with me." Seeing that I was still staring at him with tearful eyes, he simply picked up the pouch and tied it to his waist in front of me. "All right. Hurry back now." I curtsied and turned to walk out. What I needed to do next was to endure these 7 days. As soon as the master had left the mansion, the mistress barged in with her people, her temper fiercer than ever before. 3 maidservants pinned me to the ground, her embroidered shoes ground over the back of my hand, the blue bricks scraping my flesh painfully. "Just a thing pawned by the Zhao family, and you dare to be restless? Have you already forgotten your nest in Whitewell village?" Mother Huang deftly inserted 10 silver needles under my fingernails. An excruciating pain shot through my heart and lungs. I clenched my lips tightly, the taste of blood and rust spreading in my mouth, not letting out a single sound. The mistress sneered, "You're quite capable. The last one who was restless is now in a brothel, ridden by thousands and trampled by tens of thousands. You lowly scum belong there." She suddenly grabbed my hair, forcing me to look up. "At worst, I'll buy you in 3 years. Your husband might not be unwilling." Before leaving, she left 2 maidservants behind, every day at noon. Have her kneel outside the courtyard for 2 full hours. After all, giving birth doesn't require legs. It doesn't matter if she becomes lame. Lowly, restless, I suddenly began to laugh softly, the laughter growing louder and louder. In my previous life, I stayed cooped up in this courtyard, never once stepping out of line, and didn't I still end up the same way? After all, she wouldn't dare kill me right now. Let's just wait and see. After several consecutive days of kneeling as punishment, my knees had swollen to the size of steamed buns. The blood in my fingernail beds had congealed into a purplish-black color. Silently counting the days, I forced myself to endure. At noon on the 7th day, just as I was being shoved to my knees by the maids, I saw Xiaotsue rushing back in a panic, her eyes darting around. The mistress followed closely behind, storming into the courtyard gate, clutching half a page of my handwriting in her hand, her voice sharp and shrill. I never thought you could read. How dare you write back to the Li family and gossip? I looked up at her directly, with a hint of defiance. Madam, it was the master who taught me. He even taught me to recite poetry. Before she could scold me again, I recited it on my own. If love between both sides can last for why need they stay together night and day? Crash! The teapot and teacups were swept to the floor. The mistress trembled with rage, pointing at me. You wretch! She turned and snatched the bamboo clappers from Mother Huang's hands, her eyes bloodshot. I'll make sure you never use those hands again today. Stop! A familiar voice suddenly rang out. I relaxed all over, and the pain and exhaustion that had built up over 7 days instantly surged up. He fell straight down. When he opened his eyes again, the room had returned to its original state, and the candlelight was a bit dazzling. Xiao Kui was wiping away tears beside him, seeing him get up. She quickly supported him. Young lady, you've been unconscious for a day and a night. You must be hungry. I'll go get some food right away. I only realized when I lifted my hand that it was wrapped in clean gauze, and my knees were also covered with soft cloth. Before long, the table was filled with exquisite side dishes, along with a few plates of pastries I had never seen before. She arranged the dishes while muttering, "When you told me to go and inform, I thought you had been beaten senseless by the mistress. That board was just a little bit away." She patted her chest with lingering fear. Strangely enough, the master happened to return today, just in time. I clumsily picked up the food with my chopsticks, listening to her chatter, feeling an inexplicable sense of peace. She suddenly lowered her voice, unable to hide her excitement. At noon, I overheard the kitchen maids gossiping. The master was furious yesterday. He scolded the mistress harshly and personally called a doctor to treat your injuries. Seeing me show a rare hint of a smile, she also brightened up. This is great. The mistress won't dare to trouble you anymore. I gently poked her in the waist. It's still early, but at least we can have a few days of peace. Just as we were laughing, the door hinge let out a soft creak. What are you talking about? Laughing so happily. I hurriedly tried to stand up but stumbled a bit. The master stepped forward, his arm wrapping around my waist, and without a word, he pressed me back onto the edge of the bed. You have a knee injury. Why are you moving around so recklessly? I lowered my gaze, not daring to look at him, my cheeks slightly warm. Master, when did you return? Yesterday. His gaze lingered on the bandage for a moment. Madam. Hearing those 2 words, my expression instinctively tensed up, and I clutched the blanket tightly. He noticed my unusual reaction, gently stroking my back, but his tone remained calm. Ronga has a quick temper. I have already reprimanded her, and such things will not happen again in the future. I obediently nodded, blaming myself. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have given you that pouch. Causing the mistress to misunderstand. Mentioning the pouch, his eyes lit up slightly, and his tone took on a hint of interest. You actually hit the mark by accident. He rarely curved the corners of his lips, taking out that pouch from his bosom. On the way, a nest of venomous snakes suddenly appeared from nowhere. Just as they were about to pounce, in my panic, I scattered the powder inside, and those snakes actually retreated. My eyes appropriately showed surprise and lingering fear. It actually came true. Thank goodness you're safe, sir. He responded softly, tucking the pouch back into his embrace. All right, it's getting late. You should rest well. With that, he made to stand up. Master, I almost instinctively whispered softly, lightly hooking the corner of his sleeve hanging by his side. My cheeks flushed red. Today, he paused, his knuckles lightly brushing against my forehead. There's no rush for a day or two. When he withdrew his hand, his voice was somewhat hoarse. First, get well. The next 2 months finally brought some peace and quiet. Although my wife still treated me with cold indifference, she no longer resorted to physical violence. Although my husband still never stayed the night, he would come every few days to have dinner with me and chat about everyday matters. Unlike in my previous life, where he was completely indifferent, just see me as a tool for warming the bed and bearing children. That morning, I joyfully walked into the courtyard. Spreading my palms to catch the snowflakes, Xiao Kui hurried out to drape a cloak over me. You really are like a child, miss. It snows every year, be careful not to catch a chill. I smiled faintly, my hand gently resting on my lower abdomen. That evening, when the master came for dinner, his gaze lingered on my face for a moment before he suddenly teased, "You seem to have grown a bit fuller." I quickly cupped my face and pouted, "It's the hairstyle, it makes my face look round. I won't wear it like this again." His eyes held a deeper smile as his gaze drifted downward, "Not just on your face." My face flushed with embarrassment as I gently pushed him away. "Try the fish while it's hot, it's incredibly fresh. Once the lake freezes over in a few days, it'll be hard to get a taste like this." He stopped smiling, his gaze shifting to the shadow of falling snow on the window. A trace of worry clouded his eyes. "This year's snow seems particularly fierce." A chill ran through my heart, recalling my past life. This year was indeed a rare year of snow disaster. The heavy snow continued for 7 days, blocking the roads, and the household's food supplies were exhausted. It was only thanks to the timely assistance from the maternal family of the mistress that we managed to get through the crisis. Because of this, the master relied on her even more. "Master." I put down my chopsticks, stood up, and bowed in greeting. Traveling in winter is difficult. Especially now that there are signs of heavy snow. In my opinion, it would be better to stock up on easily stored food and charcoal now, just in case of emergencies. If there is still some left by the time spring arrives, setting up a porridge kitchen to help the refugees would also make for a heartwarming story. The master fell silent for a moment, his gaze toward me carrying a hint of approval. "It is rare for you to be so thoughtful. I will instruct the mistress to handle this matter tomorrow." As he spoke, he placed another piece of deboned fish into my bowl. Before I could even take a bite, I couldn't help but turn aside and retch. "What's wrong?" The master put down his chopsticks and signaled Xiao Kui to pour tea. "Feeling greasy? Drink some tea to settle it down." I was both anxious and embarrassed in that moment, perhaps because there had been no good news in the household for a long time. He didn't even think of that possibility. I looked up and called out to him, "Master." He smiled helplessly, thinking I just found the tea bitter. "Your temper has grown, Xiaotsue. Go warm some milk in the kitchen." I steeled my heart, took his hand, and placed it on my lower abdomen. "Perhaps I'm with child." Her hand suddenly paused, her voice tinged with urgency. "Really? Have you called a doctor to examine it?" I shook my head and explained softly, "It's been these past couple of days. Just smelling certain scents makes me feel nauseous. Back in the village, pregnant women always seem to be like this." He stood up, his tone carrying a hint of reproach. "Why didn't you call for a doctor, Xiaotsue?" I quickly grabbed his arm. "Master, it's already late, let's send for one tomorrow. Could you stay with me tonight?" This is the first time since I entered the mansion that I have spoken up to ask him to stay. He stood where he was, looking down at me, and finally turned to walk toward the door. I felt a bit disappointed. Was I still unable to keep him? "Ah Chang, go and tell the mistress that I won't be going over tonight." I suddenly raised my head, my eyes growing warm. "Done." Early the next morning, the lady brought the doctor along. Her eyes were dark and weary, yet her face still wore a smile. I heard my sister was feeling unwell, so I specially invited a doctor to take a look. The doctor took her pulse for a moment, then stood up and bowed to the master. "Congratulations, Master, congratulations. Madam, Miss Lin is with child, already over a month along." The madam immediately leaned over to the bedside, taking my hand, yet her knuckles subtly tightened with force. What joyous news indeed. Sister must take good care of herself. She then gave a light cough and cast a meaningful glance toward the physician. The doctor immediately understood, but Miss Lin's constitution is weak, and she needs to be isolated for quiet recuperation. It may not be suitable for her to serve the master in the coming months. That is only right. The master promptly agreed. After the master and the doctor left, the lady simply stopped pretending. "Don't get too complacent. Once you give birth, you'll obediently return to the Li family." She then feigned distress, taking out a handkerchief to cover her mouth and nose. "But if it's a daughter, she won't be of much use either." I clenched my hands tightly until my nails dug into my flesh. Yet I remained meek and submissive. "Yes, mother-son, please come in," the lady called out loudly. A short, stout woman entered in response. The wife glanced at her sideways. "From now on, you will take care of Miss Lin, and there must not be the slightest mistake." Nanny's son hurried forward, patting her chest with a smile. "Miss, rest assured. I have attended to 7 or 8 women during childbirth, and I guarantee everything will go smoothly for you." I stared at her intently. In my previous life, I trusted this honest appearance of hers and allowed her to pour endless tonics into me. As a result, during childbirth, the baby was too large, leading to a difficult delivery, and after struggling to give birth to my daughter, I hadn't even had a chance to look at her before she turned and handed the baby to the mistress. Seeing it was a baby girl, and fearing I would steal her favor, she strangled the child to death right before my eyes. No matter how I pleaded, it was of no use. In the end, she simply told everyone that I had given birth to a stillborn. I lowered my head to hide my hatred, forcing out a few words with difficulty. "Thank you for your concern, mother." In the following days, the snow indeed fell as if pouring from the heavens. The grain shops on the streets had long since closed their doors. And even at high prices, it was difficult to find a peck of rice or a basin of charcoal. Occasionally, frozen refugees could be seen collapsed in corners, and temporary shelters for collecting the dead had been set up outside the city. Fortunately, I had heeded my advice earlier, and the household had stockpiled enough grain for 3 months. Although we had to tighten our belts, we managed to have a peaceful new year. The master's gaze towards me now held a hint of scrutiny, and occasionally, during discussions, he would ask for my opinion. Although my wife doesn't come often, she sends things frequently, and my food, clothing, and daily necessities have gradually become more refined. That day, mother's son brought bird's nest soup again. I held the bowl and sipped it slowly, catching a glimpse of her pants soaked through at the hem. If I weren't going to the main house, I would never have stepped into such deep snow, but getting rid of her was no easy task. Just as she turned to leave, I suddenly spoke up. "I remember that my mother's grandson will be 4 years old after the new year, right?" The smile on her face as she turned around was almost overflowing. "You still remember, miss, that little rascal is quite mischievous now." In her previous life, just a few days after the snow stopped, mother's son hurriedly asked for leave to return home. Later, she vaguely overheard the maids in the mansion gossiping in private, saying that her grandson hadn't survived that heavy snowfall. I looked at the worry that couldn't be hidden in her eyes, and gradually an idea formed in my mind. Rather than getting rid of one only to have another take their place, it would be better to make her work for me. I leisurely added another piece of charcoal to the brazier and said gently, "The snow is so heavy, it must be even harder to endure outside the city. I'm still in the early stages of my pregnancy, so it's not a problem for me. If you're concerned about your family, why not go and ask the mistress for help?" Mother son's smile froze completely at the corners of her mouth, her eyes flickering. This old servant has already pleaded, but I quickly furrowed my brow, my tone tinged with worry. This heavy snow came so suddenly. All the shops have long since closed. If anyone were to fall ill with a headache or fever, I'm afraid there wouldn't even be a place to get medicine. The more she spoke, the uglier mother son's expression became. Her hands gripping the hem of her clothes tightly. Finally, with a determined heart, she knelt down with a thud. She pleaded, "Please, miss, help this servant. That child always gets a cough when winter comes, and in this freezing cold, my heart is hanging by a thread." I didn't agree right away, only showing a troubled expression. I was just bought back by the Zhao family. What can I possibly do? Mother son looked up at me, no longer hiding her intentions. "You're a smart girl. Everyone knows you came here because you had no other choice. But judging by the master's attitude toward you, it's clear you have your ways." I let out a soft snort. "You're clever. But this matter is difficult. Going against the mistress's wishes won't bring me any good either." Seeing that I did not directly refuse, mother's son guessed the implication behind my words. "If you are willing to help, I will always be on your side from now on. Having more support is always a good thing." Seeing the genuine urgency in her eyes, I finally relented. "Why are you still kneeling? Go back and get ready." then wait for the news. After mother-son left, I immediately instructed Xiaotsue, go to the backyard and cut a thin bamboo, then find some cotton paper and fine thread. Xiaotsue was puzzled. What does the young lady need these for? To make something that will startle the master. I gaze out the window at the gradually subsiding wind and snow, a worried expression on my face. Ever since winter set in, the mistress's health has not been good. The master has been staying in the main house these past few days and hasn't come here for 5 or 6 days now. I must find some excuse to see him. As night fell, Kongming lanterns rose one by one from my courtyard, occasionally making a thumping sound. What is that? Kongming lanterns. Why is there sound? Country bumpkin. There's paper and drum inside, the servants whispered, peeking over the courtyard wall. In less than half the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, the master also came looking, with a hint of reproach in his tone. What a foolish idea. The roads are slippery in the snow. What are you doing out here? I knew he wasn't truly angry, so I pointed at the lanterns in the sky and laughed. Master, what do you think? Is it beautiful? He casually picked up one of my lanterns that I hadn't yet released and read the poem written on it. May every year bring greater joy. With peace and happiness always by your side. The poem is lovely, but the calligraphy still needs more practice. I puffed out my cheeks and turned my head away. It's because the master didn't teach well. He only said dotingly, all right, hurry inside after you're done. I took out another blank one. This is for the master. Please quickly write your blessings. He only wrote a few words with ease. May the entire household be safe and prosperous. Seeing him in a relaxed mood, I seized the opportunity to say, Master, the nanny who takes care of me, Granny's son, is very diligent, but her grandson at home has come down with a cough. These past few days, she has been restless day and night. And it truly looks pitiful. Now that my pregnancy is stable, why not grant her a few days off to go back and check on him? It would also be a way to accumulate blessings for the child in my womb. He didn't think much and nodded in agreement. Hurry inside. The wind is strong out here. Inside the room, the candlelight flickered, and the charcoal brazier was burning brightly. I leaned back on the chaise lounge, my hand gently resting on my lower abdomen, my voice softening a little. Master, if this child is a girl, will you not want her? A flicker of anger crossed his brow. When did I ever say I wouldn't want her? Whether boy or girl, they are both descendants of the Zhao family. How could I just cast them aside? But I refused to let it go, muttering sullenly, words may sound sweet, but if it's a daughter, who knows how much disdain you might harbor in your heart. Anyway, if you don't want her when the time comes, I'll take her back to the Li family. If the Li family doesn't want her, I'll go out and do laundry or sewing to support her. He was so provoked that he genuinely lost his temper and slammed the table. Lin Yingying, what kind of person do you take me for? Only those with narrow minds would belittle their daughters. And what do you mean by bringing you back to the Li family? He glared at me, seething with anger. You are now a member of the Zhao household. Stop mentioning the Li family or the Wang family. And don't even think about it in the future. My eyes reddened, and I choked back tears, saying, once I give birth, I will be separated from my own flesh and blood. When the 3-year term is up, I must return to the Li family. All of this before my eyes is nothing but a fleeting dream. The master's face turned ashen. He stood up, paced back and forth a couple of steps, filled with both urgency and anger, yet unable to vent it. Finally, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. His roar soon echoed from the courtyard. Xiaotsue, burn all those frivolous books of hers. I should never have taught her to read in the first place. Xiaotsue answered the call and entered, her face clouded with displeasure. Miss, why must you do this? The master finally came to visit, and you've driven him away again. Seeing her puffed up with anger, I couldn't help but laugh. Cry and you'll get candy. Those who are usually well behaved, when they occasionally throw a tantrum, are actually more likely to be remembered. Moreover, only by putting the master in a difficult position and laying a solid foundation will it be more beneficial for me and the child. Bring me paper and a pen. Then, I picked up the pen and skillfully imitated Li Wenhan's handwriting to write a family letter. Xiao Kui, remember these words well. Early the next morning, Xiao Kui rushed back into the room in a flurry, gulping down tea. Miss, You are truly, truly, truly amazing. I set down the tiger head shoes I was embroidering and raised an eyebrow to ask, tell me about it. I was just about to head to the kitchen when a Chang stopped me and took me to the study. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Master indeed asked what you've been up to lately. I did as you taught me and said that a few days ago, you received a letter from the Li family, and you cried over it for half the night without even eating. The master flew into a rage as soon as he heard. Asking about the contents of the letter, I told him I couldn't read, so he ordered me to find a way to steal it. I handed the letter over. Go later, and don't give yourself away. Xiaotsue was still a bit flustered. Aren't you afraid the master will investigate? Miss, investigate what? I smiled faintly. I have a proper husband. I am not a legitimate concubine of the Zhao family. If word gets out, it would seem as if he forcibly took another man's wife. For the sake of the Zhao family's reputation, he would never make this public. A few more days passed, and the wind and snow finally stopped. Although the master did not come to visit, Xiaotsue slipped some silver to the servants in the outer courtyard and found out. The master had actually sent a few trusted men disguised as bandits to Whitewell village, where they cornered Li Wenhan at the village entrance and beat him up. It is said he even lost 2 teeth. Though I knew this bit of physical pain was far from a fraction of what I had endured in my past life, the pent-up frustration in my heart finally eased a little. Just as we were speaking, the cotton curtain was lifted from outside, and Mother's son returned. As soon as she entered the room, she knelt on the ground, tears streaming down her aged face. Miss, your great kindness, if it weren't for you pleading with the master to let me go back. And even getting some medicine and food from the storeroom, my poor grandson, I'm afraid he really wouldn't have made it. I reached out to help her up, gently stroking my belly, feeling a wave of relief in my heart. I had thought I could smoothly make it until the time of my delivery, but unexpected changes always come faster. Madam's family has sent someone over. On the very first day, I was summoned to the main house to learn the rules. I stood under the eaves, supporting my 7-month pregnant belly, and within moments, I was drenched in sweat, my head dizzy and heavy. The old lady gently stirred the tea with the lid of her cup, not even lifting her eyelids. Stand straight. There's no need to put on such an affected act. The master has gone out of town to collect debts these past few days, and no one can save you. The wife was wiping away tears beside her. Mother, this lowly wench is so despicable. She has caused several arguments between my husband and me. Seeing my pale face, she seemed to have some concerns, but she is heavily pregnant now. What if you are the mistress of this household, and she's just a lowly servant we hired on contract? How dare she rebel? She glanced at me, her tone growing even harsher. There are plenty of women who can bear children. Does she think she can act high and mighty just because she's pregnant? Do you think the master would turn against our Bai family for her sake? Don't worry, I already asked the doctor. Your pregnancy is stable. Standing for a few hours won't cause any harm. It was already evening by the time I was allowed to return. Xiao Kui had been waiting at the door. Seeing me in this state, she quickly fetched an ice-cold towel to press against my forehead and brought over a cooling, pregnancy-stabilizing herbal soup. Every time I enter the main house, it feels like I'm shedding a layer of skin. What am I to do? In my previous life, old Madame Bai had never visited, and I knew very little about her. Now, with all these events unfolding, I fear it's because my influence is gradually growing. The mistress is likely worried that once I give birth to a child, she'll be even less able to keep me in check. I specifically called my family over to give them a good talking to. At the very least, I have to hold out until the master returns. Miss Lin, you'd better hurry and tidy up. Don't keep the old madam and the mistress waiting. Liu Qing, the head maid by the mistress's side, stood at the door, her tone sharp and impatient. I was leaning on the couch, supporting my waist, truly unable to move. Miss Liu Qing, I am really unwell today. Please go back and report for me. I will definitely go tomorrow to pay my respects to the old lady and the madam and apologize. Liu Qing immediately rolled her eyes, flicking the handkerchief in her hand toward her waist. The old lady rarely visits. Isn't it inappropriate for you not to go? If you want to decline, do it yourself. Don't make things difficult for us servants. Xiaotsue couldn't help but speak up from the side. Can't you see our young lady is suffering from her pregnancy? A sharp crack sound interrupted Xiaotsue's words. Liu Qing sternly reprimanded, "What's this you and us?" The mistress said that Miss Lin was brought back, so in the end, she's still a servant, no different from us. Xiao Kui, don't forget, you are a servant of the Zhao family too. She then turned to me, "Miss Lin, please hurry up, if we have to send a few old women to fetch you later, it'll be embarrassing for everyone. Don't you think?" I gritted my teeth and struggled to sit up, speaking slowly. "I'll go, you wait outside." As soon as Liu Qing left, I immediately signaled to Mother Sun. She quickly took out the prepared peanut paste from the bottom of the dressing case and applied it on me, then carefully wiped away the traces with a damp cloth. I have been allergic to this since childhood. Even the slightest contact causes large red rashes. In less than the time it takes to drink half a cup of tea, fine red spots first appeared on my face, spreading down my neck toward my chest, itching unbearably, yet I had to endure it without scratching. Xiaotsue was deeply worried. "Miss, will something happen?" "Don't worry, it just looks scary," I gasped, pressing my hand against my lower abdomen. "Hurry and call Liu Qing in." When she lifted the curtain and came in, her eyes widened, and she let out a sharp scream. "Oh my heavens, this!" She turned and ran towards the main house. In less than a quarter of an hour, the mistress and the old lady hurried over with the doctor. Upon entering and seeing me in this state, the two of them took half a step back in fright. The doctor stepped forward to take my pulse, carefully examined the red rashes on my body, and said gravely, "Madam, old madam, Miss Lin has developed hives on her body, likely from accidentally touching something unclean, which has caused the wind toxin to flare up externally. Moreover, the young lady is heavily pregnant, burdened with worries and anxieties, and her internal heat is excessive, which is why the outbreak is so severe. Fortunately, the fetal foundation is stable. Let me prescribe 2 doses of medicine to dispel the wind and clear the toxins, and it should subside within a few days." Upon hearing the physician's confident assurance that the fetal foundation is stable, the mother and daughter both breathed a slight sigh of relief, just waved his hand impatiently. "Then hurry up and prescribe the medicine, it's just that she's being overly delicate and troublesome." After the two of them left, I completely collapsed on the couch. After tossing and turning for the past 2 days, I finally figured out one thing. The master has no children under his knees, yet he has been able to avoid taking concubines for many years, not solely relying on that bit of childhood affection. The true key lies in the maternal family of the mistress. I forced myself to gather my spirits, my voice carrying a barely noticeable tension. "Have you found out the background of the mistress's maternal family?" Xiaotsue applied the ointment for me while whispering softly, "Madam's maternal family often moves in official circles. Many of the master's important business dealings require their connections and introductions, which is why he relies on Madam so heavily." My heart sank heavily. No matter how much the master pities me, how could he possibly give up the support of the Bai family? Having been reborn once, must I still follow the same old path, although old Mrs. Bai only stayed for a few days before leaving? She left Madam with a tough challenge to handle. Though the master came every day, his brow was always clouded with weariness. The way he looked at me was quite complex, as if he had something stuck in his throat. The closer I got to my due date, the harder it was for me to sleep at night. I kept dreaming of my daughter crying when she was taken away. I once forced a smile and probed, "Master, are you hoping for a boy or a girl?" He always avoids my gaze and only says vaguely, "Everything is fine, as long as we are safe." I understand his unspoken words. If it were a son, I would have to return to the Li family immediately. This is probably difficult for him as well. The night was deep and dark, yet my courtyard was illuminated by lanterns as bright as day. I curled up in agony on the bed, my forehead damp with sweat, the waves of pain in my abdomen tearing through my body like 1,000 sharp blades. "Miss, you must push harder." Mother Sun's anxious voice echoed in the room, her hands covered in blood. The maid beside her bustled about, fetching water and handing over cloths. "Ah, it hurts." I was barely breathing, clutching the bedsheet. In the corner of my eye, A figure was always sitting behind the screen, my wife. She held a teacup, her fingertips occasionally tapping the tabletop, as if patiently waiting for something. A surge of overwhelming hatred and fear instantly ignited the last of my strength, and I let out a piercing, mournful cry. Wah! A clear, crisp cry rang out. Mother's son shouted joyfully, "She's born! She's born! It's a girl!" Behind the screen, a shadow set down the teacup with a loud clang. The wife rushed over with hurried steps, her voice rising sharply. "A girl! Bring her here!" Her hand shot out, but Xiaoxue was quicker. Clutching the swaddled baby tightly to her chest before turning and dashing outside, screaming hoarsely, "Master, the young lady has given birth, it's a little girl." I watched Xiaoqui's figure disappear through the doorway, and only then did darkness completely engulf my vision. When I opened my eyes again, daylight was streaming in. The master was sitting by the bed, carefully holding the swaddled baby. A faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth, the wife stood to the side, a smile on her face, but her tone carried a hint of firmness. "Master, the child's safe arrival is a joyous occasion. I think it's best to take the child to my room to raise as soon as possible, and then find a wet nurse." The master remained silent, gently stroking the child's cheek with his fingertip. After a long pause, he finally said, "The child is still too young to be separated from its mother. Let Yingying raise it for now, and after weaning." "Master," the lady grew anxious, taking 2 steps forward. "Last time, mother specifically instructed that the child should be taken away from the birth mother as soon as possible, lest over time, inappropriate thoughts arise, making the young lady confused about who the child's real mother is." The master's arms holding the child visibly stiffened, and a hint of hesitation flickered in his eyes. I struggled to sit up. "Master, mistress." The master quickly held me down. "Don't move around, you're still weak. I know my status is lowly. I dare not hope for anything else. But this child, I risked my life to bring her into this world. I only beg you, sir, to let me look at her for a few more days, so that when I am gone, I can still remember her face." "Gone?" The master abruptly cut me off, his voice tinged with a barely noticeable panic. "Who said you were leaving?" The wife's face turned ashen. She was about to speak, but the master had already turned his head away, his gaze fixed on her face for a moment. "It's settled. The child will stay with Yingying for now. Once weaned, you can take him back and teach him yourself. Afterwards." I heard that the lady and the master had a big argument. The master was so angry that he didn't return to the main house for several days, only resting in the study. As I held my daughter to nurse, I listened to Xiaoxue's words and simply smiled faintly. That day, the master came to the courtyard to accompany me, the weariness between his brows even more pronounced. Holding my daughter, I felt a slight sense of relief. The new prefect who will take office in 2 months. I wonder what his temperament will be like. He sighed, his fingertips gently brushing behind the baby's ear. "Everyone in the Chamber of Commerce is on edge. Business is likely to be tough going forward." I hugged my knees and listened, suddenly recalling that there seemed to be a similar moment in my past life. At that time, I was deeply immersed in the grief of losing my daughter, and I paid no attention to the affairs of the household. I only vaguely remember that the Zhao family was able to weather the storm later on, thanks in no small part to the maneuvering of the Bai family, the maternal relatives of the mistress. He lowered his head to play with the child and said to himself, "It's quite a coincidence." He was transferred from Jiangnan. I was also a bit curious and casually asked, "Please tell me, master, perhaps I've heard some rumors about it." "Ju Huaimin, Ju Huaimin." The rattle in my hand fell onto the bedding with a thud, and even my breath caught in my throat. The master raised an eyebrow and teased, "What? Could it be that you truly recognize it?" I clutched the edge of the quilt, and after a long while, managed to force out a strained smile. "You jest, master." He didn't think much of it, only saying, "You rest first. I still have official business to attend to." The master's footsteps gradually faded away, holding my daughter. My fingertips couldn't stop trembling. It was actually Uncle Ju. Back when my father served as an official in Jiangnan, Uncle Ju was still a scholar. The two formed a friendship during a flood, and since he and his wife had no daughters of their own, they treated me as their own child. and I was recognized as their goddaughter from a young age. Later, my family became entangled in factional disputes, leading to imprisonment and exile. The Jew family also tried to pull strings for us, but the higher-ups were watching too closely, and in the end, they couldn't save us. A sour, bitter feeling welled up in my nose. I lifted my head, gazing at the sun outside the window, and slowly, a light began to shine in my eyes. From that day on, I practically counted the days on my fingers. Enduring each one, day and night, I eagerly awaited news of Uncle Jew's transfer. Surprisingly, the mistress remained unusually quiet. She never again mentioned taking the child away, nor did she cause me any trouble. When something seems abnormal, there must be a hidden reason. Although I had a premonition, I still couldn't figure it out. One day, Xiaoxue rushed in, almost stumbling as she entered. Miss, Madam is with child. What? Amidst my shock, a sliver of doubt still lingered. Since the untimely death of Madam's only son, 10 years of seeking renowned physicians and consuming countless tonics had yielded no news whatsoever, and now, she is with child, absolutely certain. It was diagnosed by a famous physician invited by the Bai family. I heard he has treated many high-ranking officials and nobles, so there's absolutely no mistake, Xiaoxue anxiously said. The master was overjoyed to hear the news. But I heard that the mistress is suffering terribly from morning sickness and can't keep anything down. If the mistress gives birth safely to a son, my fate is all too easy to imagine. As I was pondering this, a servant boy came to report. Someone from Bai village is asking to see you, waiting at the side gate. I sneered inwardly, having almost forgotten that despicable wretch. As I headed toward the side gate with Xiaoxue, I spotted Li Wenhan huddled against the wall from a distance. His eyes roamed over me, finally settling on the gold hairpin in my hair. He quickly stepped forward, rubbing his hands together with a sly grin. TSK, just look at this fine silk and satin, the gold hairpins and jade bracelets. The Zhao family is truly wealthy. You look even more radiant than before. Suppressing my disgust, I choked back tears, as if I had suffered endless grievances. My lord, you've finally come. I knew it. You wouldn't abandon me, is it? Is it to take me home? His expression suddenly changed, and he hurriedly took a few steps back. I would very much like to take you back, but the time limit hasn't been reached yet. His eyes darted around, and he put on a pitiful expression again. His hand almost touched my sleeve, but he withdrew it awkwardly after being glared at fiercely by Xiaoxue. Good Ying, if I weren't at the end of my rope, how could I bear to let you suffer here? Mother, she's fallen ill again. The doctor said if we don't get the medicine soon, she won't last 3 days. Go and beg the master. You just gave birth to a daughter for him. He should at least show a little gratitude, shouldn't he? Seeing that I didn't respond, he grew anxious, his voice rising half a pitch as he pointed at my nose and began to curse. After all, we were once husband and wife. You can't just stand by and watch mother die, can you? Don't forget, if it weren't for mother, you would have frozen to death in the snow long ago. You wear gold and silver, living in luxury, while you watch your own mother die of illness. Are you even human? His spittle nearly sprayed onto my face. I suddenly looked up, my voice icy cold. 50 taels of silver, gone in less than 2 years. If you were truly filial, why did you gamble? You squandered the money yourself, and now you want me to fulfill your filial duties for you. How dare you defy me? Li Wenhan's face flushed purple with anger, raising his hand as if to strike me, but Xiaoqui stepped in front of him, blocking his way. Enough! A furious roar exploded. The master had appeared at the corner gate at some point, his face ashen with rage. Clearly, he had heard all the foul language just now. He was followed by 2 sturdy servants. The master didn't even glance at him, his gaze sweeping over the servant bowing his head nearby. Worthless scum, how dare you let any stray cat or dog in here? What use are you? The servant was so frightened that he fell to his knees with a thud. Only then did he turn to me, his gaze complex, filled with anger at my lack of resolve. You should never have seen him, and you certainly shouldn't have listened to such filthy words from him. I fell to my knees with a thud, tears streaming down my face. Master, please calm your anger, but after all, he is my husband. I cannot simply stand by and watch my mother-in-law die from illness." With that, she broke down in tears once more. "Husband," the master abruptly cut her off, as if those two words had struck a deep chord within him. "What kind of husband is he to you? Someone come." The master's voice was icy, carrying an unquestionable resolve. "Go to the accounts office, take 200 taels of silver, and throw it to that scoundrel outside the gate." He pointed at Li Wenhan, whose face was ashen, and said word by word, "From now on, Lin Yingying is a member of my Zhao household. She has nothing more to do with you. If you dare to come and cause trouble again, watch out for your life." Li Wenhan felt as if he had been granted a pardon. He scrambled to pick up the silver thrown by the servant, not daring to look back as he fled. I hung my head, letting Xiao Kui help me up. "Thank you, master, for your mercy." When the mistress learned that the master had completely severed my ties with the Li family, she was so furious that she smashed all the porcelain in the room. However, what's done is done, and she could do nothing about it. As the months passed, her body grew weaker day by day. On the day the new prefect took office, merchants from all over the city scrambled to submit their name cards. The master prepared gold, silver, fine silks, and antiques to pay a visit, but was stopped by the gatekeeper outside the mansion. Didn't even get to see Lord Ju's face. I promptly offered a cup of clear tea and said softly, "Master, the new prefect has just taken office, and there are various matters to attend to, along with the mundane affairs of gold and silver. You must have seen a lot. People from Jiangnan cherish the taste of their homeland the most. Master, why not try sending some Jiangnan pastries? It won't seem abrupt, and it can also soothe the homesickness." His eyes lit up. "You make a good point. If I rashly seek an audience, I will surely be seen as someone trying to climb the social ladder. But is there anyone in the household who can make authentic Jiangnan pastries? If the master is willing to trust me, perhaps I could give it a try." I lowered my head slightly, a faint smile playing at the corners of my mouth. "Excellent, excellent. It's a good thing we have you." The master's eyes were filled with admiration, and he immediately instructed the steward, "Quickly fetch the tally token and key and hand them over to Aunt Lin. Before the mistress gives birth, all matters in the household, big or small, shall be managed and arranged by Aunt Lin." I immediately ordered the purchase of the finest ingredients from Jiangnan and personally busied myself in the kitchen. The rising steam from the steamer blurred my vision. I took the opportunity to dismiss the servants and carefully tucked a tiny, tightly folded note into the bottom of a ding sheng cake. The master soon had the pastries delivered. As expected, the Jew residents accepted them this time and even sent back a reply, inviting the master for a visit. He returned beaming with joy. "Minister Ju praised the pastries you made to the skies. He said he will bring his wife to visit us personally tomorrow and specifically asked to meet the skilled hands behind them." The master lowered his head to kiss his daughter's forehead, then looked at me, the warmth in his eyes almost overflowing. The next day, I dressed early, changing into a simple and elegant dress. When the master led me out, I met the eyes of the elderly couple and immediately felt my eyes well up with tears, but I immediately shook my head, signaling them not to make a fuss. The master stood nearby, not understanding what was happening. I quickly stepped in to smooth things over. When fellow countrymen meet, tears well up in their eyes. Why not let me show Mrs. Ju around the estate? When I led her into my courtyard, I could no longer hold back and burst into tears, and recounted in detail the hardships I had endured over the years. Aunt Ju listened with a heart-wrenching pain, holding me tightly. "Poor child, you've suffered so much, it's all our fault. We couldn't protect you." I raised my tear-filled eyes, forcing a smile. "It's all in the past. My husband treats me well enough, I have food and clothing. And I even have a daughter now." Returning to the flower hall, though Aunt Ju's eyes were still red, her demeanor had regained its grace and composure. In front of my husband, she affectionately took my hand. "Master Zhao." I felt an instant connection with Yingying upon meeting her, and hearing her story only deepened my compassion. As it happens, I have no daughter of my own, and today I wish to adopt Yingying as our goddaughter. What does Master Zhao think of this? The goddaughter of the prefect and his wife. This status is nothing short of a heavenly blessing. The master was taken aback at first, But upon realizing what was happening, he abruptly stood up. Such great favor from Lord Ju and his wife is an immense blessing for Yingying. How could I possibly refuse? Yingying, quickly pay your respects to your godfather and godmother. I solemnly bowed, the last lingering stone in my heart finally settling. Upon learning that I now held sole authority within the household, old lady Bai actually came in person. I led the maidservants to stand waiting at the entrance of the estate, and as her sedan chair came to a stop, I quickly knelt to pay my respects, my voice steady, greetings to the elder madam, yet she paid no attention. Walking straight past me, I straightened up, watching her hurried figure heading toward the main house, a slight smile curling at the corner of my lips. I then instructed the maid behind me, bring the freshly brewed Longjing tea to the main house, and prepare some almond pastries. The elder madam has always been fond of these. When I arrived later, I heard an argument coming from the main room. Foolish, old lady Bai was furious, her voice trembling. That prescription is draining your life. I shouldn't have been soft-hearted and given it to you in the first place. Look at you now, neither human nor ghost. If this continues, neither you nor the child will survive. The lady's voice was sharp and frantic, filled with a desperate, all-or-nothing despair. I only want this child. I stood under the corridor, my heart pounding wildly. No wonder she became pregnant in such a short time and was so utterly exhausted. She was gambling with her own life. A chill surged through my chest. The image of my daughter's tragic death in my past life flashed before my eyes. I lowered my head and smiled, but there was not a trace of warmth in my eyes. I brought this upon myself. I shouldn't have lived in the first place. A few days later, news came from the main house that there had been signs of bleeding, and the medicine to protect the pregnancy was being brewed day and night without pause. The time has come. In the afternoon, I personally carried the medicine bowl to the main room. As soon as I entered, I saw the mistress looking haggard, leaning against a soft pillow, her face as pale as paper. She looked up and saw me, then suddenly grabbed the empty bowl beside her and hurled it at me. Get out, who told you to come? Yet I was not angered. The smile on my face grew even gentler. Madam, please calm your anger. I have come to deliver medicine. Your health is of utmost importance. Why trouble yourself with anger, ignoring her murderous glare? I gracefully sat down by the bedside and made a gesture to feed her the medicine. You should drink the medicinal soup soon, madam, or else this hard-won child may not be safe. Madam trembled all over. You know, the master knows too. I chuckled softly, deliberately pausing for a moment, watching the color drain from her face bit by bit. But he said nothing. Even with the deep affection of childhood sweethearts, in the end, it couldn't withstand the judgment of the world. Nor could it withstand the dignity of the Zhao family. Shut up. She lunged at me like a madwoman, trying to tear at me, but I nimbly dodged, and she stumbled back onto the bed. Ah! I exclaimed in shock, the medicine bowl in my hand clattering to the floor and shattering, splashing scalding liquid everywhere. At the same time, the lady let out a shrill, almost inhuman scream. A large gush of dark red, almost black blood instantly surged from beneath her. Soaking through the embroidered quilt like a floodgate had opened, the room immediately erupted into chaos. The midwife was quickly summoned, and the heart-wrenching screams from inside the room were agonizing. I stood under the corridor, listening to the commotion within. 2 hours later, the midwife emerged holding a swaddled bundle, her face deathly pale. Master, it's a young master. He didn't survive. The mistress, she's gone too. 1 life, 2 deaths. The main courtyard fell into a deathly silence for a moment, soon filled with suppressed sobs. The master instantly turned ashen, collapsing into his chair as if all his spirit had been drained away. The funeral was grand yet cold. The entire household was as silent as cicadas in winter. The mistress and her unborn child became a forbidden topic in the mansion. Shortly after the dust settled, the master submitted the official documents and elevated me to the position of the principal wife. The seal of household authority rightfully fell into my hands, and the first thing I did was to have someone prepare a carriage and head to Whitewell Village to inquire about Li Wenhan's news. Who would have thought that scoundrel actually managed to deceive the daughter of the village chief next door into marrying him? The girl is already 3 months pregnant, and he seems to be living quite contentedly. Oh, I twirled the lid of my teacup in hand and smiled faintly. I hope he has the ability to handle it. 3 days later, Beijing village was thrown into an uproar. Li Wenhan had contracted a severe illness in his childhood, and it was feared that he might be unable to have children. Once the news was released, the effect was immediate. The village chief grew highly suspicious and immediately had Li Wenhan bound and brought to a doctor for examination. The outcome spoke for itself. He was simply born impotent. The village chief, overwhelmed with shame and fury, threatened to beat him to death. It was only then that Li Wenhan confessed the whole story of how he had sought to borrow another man's seed. The young woman fainted on the spot. The village chief trembled with rage, pointing at Li Wenhan's nose and cursing for a long time. In the end, he ordered someone to break his legs, and together with his ailing mother, they were dragged out of the village and thrown into a dilapidated temple outside. When news came again after winter arrived, Li Wenhan, with his broken legs and no possessions, could only beg for a living with his mother, and they soon passed away. When discovered, only dismembered limbs remained. After the start of spring, I discussed with Uncle Ju, using his status as the prefect, to post notices in all the counties under his jurisdiction, stating that anyone involved in the practice of wife pawning, whether the master or the middleman, would be punished according to the crime of trafficking in human beings, thus completely abolishing the evil custom of wife pawning. Not long after, the physician diagnosed me with pregnancy again. The joy in the master's eyes nearly overflowed. He was stunned for a moment before tightly embracing me, but this happiness did not last beyond 3 nights. He often went to sit before the mistress's memorial tablet, staying there for half the night. The candlelight cast flickering shadows on his face. That day, he pressed his ear against my belly to listen to the fetal movements, unable to hide the smile on his face, but suddenly let out a sigh. Last night, I dreamed of Ronga. She blamed me for not protecting her well. He held me close, his chin resting on the top of my head, his voice trembling, Inging. You're all I have now. I lowered my gaze, concealing the fleeting cold glint in my eyes, and gently patted his back. I know, sir, I will stay with you, with the children. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.